I've got no roots, but my home was never on the ground. I've got no roots, but my home was never on the ground. I've got no roots. I've got no roots. I've got no roots. I've got no roots.
Before enjoying the peace and tranquility that exists now, Southern Thailand has been through various conflicts and issues in their country. So, this video will unravel some of the issues that have occurred in Southern Thailand.
Southern Thailand is home to one of Asia's most serious insurgencies, with over 6,000 people killed there since 2004. The main conflict is between elements of the Malay Muslim population in the country's southern border provinces and the Thai state. Today, successive Bangkok governments' attempts to address the conflict through a combination of repressive security measures and ill-conceived socio-economic development projects have yielded little result. This is essentially a political problem that requires a political solution, which it is something that Thai authorities have been very reluctant to acknowledge until recently. The conflict in southern Thailand between the Patani Malays and the Siamese government has occurred since the reigns of the Patani Malay king long ago. The Siamese government had carried out many attacks on the state of Patani until finally the Patani government could no longer refrain from the attack of the Siamese army, and the state of Patani fell under the occupation of the Siamese government in 1786. This conflict then continued to this day. The use of demonstration strategies as a way to channel their dissatisfaction is a frequently used method. Examples are the demonstration in Patani for 45 days in the year 1975 until 1976, the hijab demonstration in Yala, the demonstration in Kerisik, and most recently the demonstration in Takbai. Demonstrations in southern Thailand often erupt after people feel depressed. It also aims for them to demand their rights, such as the demand for the government to retaliate against government officials who oppress the Malays of Patani, the demand for Muslims in Thailand to wear the hijab officially, the demand for the Kerisik mosque to remain belonging to locals, and demands for the release of those suspected of involvement with separatist groups. These demonstrations are often specific and as a tool to demand the rights of those oppressed by Thai government officials.
The South Thai and Patani insurgency is ongoing conflict that occur in southern Thailand. This conflict is begin in the year of 1948 when an ethnic and religious protest in Thailand's traditional Malay Patani region. The insurgency in southern Thailand is primarily active in the countries of Narathiwat, Patani and Yala. More than 65% of Thailand's Muslim population live in Patani region, and another half of the total was a Thai Budi regions. The increase of stricter religious Islamic in southern Thailand is frequently mentioned as contributing factor to the violence, especially given Muslim outrage over the Thai military involvement. When the conflict occurred, a group of attackers threatened an army camp in the southern Thailand state of Narathiwat in the year of January 2004. They are confiscating hundreds of guns and attempting to kill 4 soldiers. Besides, the conflict also began with simultaneous attack on 11 police positions in Patani, Yala and Songkhla. Through the attack, 100 militants and 5 security had been killed. Furthermore, to express their dissatisfaction on the conflict, a common method was used as demonstration strategy. For example, demonstration in Patani, Yala, Kerisik and Takbai. The purpose of this demonstration is to claim their rights, such as demand for the government to take action against official government that oppress the Malays of Patani. From all the occurrences when the conflict take place, there are several reasons and factors why violence created the conflict in southern Thailand is because of the social change development and government failure in handling the conflict. The biggest impact of the colonial legacy as an effort to prevent the people in Thailand from uniting under the name of race and religion. On October 2004, the bloody Takbai incident occurred in which 78 Muslims died while being in Thai military custody during the months of Ramadan. The Takbai tragedy began after the arrest of 6 volunteer members accused of making false report about the loss of weapon. The methods that was taken by the police and army officer in order to stop the crowd and demonstration from happening even more were not only inappropriate but also excessive. The police and army officer released a live gun to the protester and killing 7 of them. The factor that contributed to the occurrence of this tragedy is because the discriminatory attitude of Thai officer and the also unwillingness to understand the ethnic feelings and wishes of local people. The impacts that we can see from the tragedy of Takbai are the incident worsened the tie between the Muslim minority concentrated in the southern Thailand. In the social aspect, Thai Muslim get a bad name to be here, which is hate, which means outsider.
The first parties that involved in the conflict of southern Thailand is OMIP. This involvement of identity of Malay Muslim Patani has had both positive and negative impacts. The Thailand government has come up with a number of plans to change OMIP identity. In this case of Patani, this method is used through policies that force people to do things. OMIP accept that decision that has already been made even if it goes against what the minority group wants. Ratanyom and Thai Romnian are two policies that the government made. The goal of this policy is to change OMIP's names, culture and religion so that they are more like to Thai people. As a part of the policy, Siamese and Malay languages were banned from schools and government office. Family and village names were changed to Thai. The 2004 conflict had a lot to do with the question of who people are, even like schools being burned down and teachers and officials being shot in public show that the Thai Buddhist education system is still going on and still being opposed by OMIP. And experts said that the burning of the school was not done intentionally to do damage. Instead, it was done to show the Thai government and the rest of the world that the education system taught in schools is the way of imposing Thai culture on Malay children in short.
Secondly, Thailand government, political organizations, police officers and armies. First of all, the conflicts that arise have led to the emergence of a lot of political organizations among Malay Muslims. It is to show rebellion towards Thailand government and from armies. First of all, the conflicts that arise have led to the emergence of a lot of political organizations among Malay Muslims. It is to show rebellion towards Thailand government and for freedom. During 1950s, two political organizations were established, United Greater Patani Malays Movement or GAMPAR and Patani People's Movement (PPM). They want to promote their own agenda through both of these political organizations. In 1959, ex-leaders of GAMPAR and PPM established a new political organization, Patani National Liberation Front (BNPP). The purpose is for Patani's independence. The conflict growing during 1960s to the extent where there are armed groups in that region. BNPP cooperate with rebels and criminal elements within Patani society to launch guerrilla warfare. In 1963, the National Revolution Front (BRN) was established. It focused on political organization within religious schools, but since it is certain Islamic socialist ideology, it set apart from BNPP and PULO. Patani United Liberation Organization (PULO) is the third armed group. It is the most effective movement that make it last until 2 decades. Their ideology is solely about religion, homeland, race, and humanitarianism. After being under pressure for 2 decades, in 1980s, General Prem Tinsulan Nonda took position as Prime Minister. To surpass the rebellion movement, they changed strategy by focusing more on political and military. They created a Civil Police Military Joint Task Force or CPM-43 to take charge of security operations. They also introduced policy of attraction, aiming to drive away the sympathy from separatists. Southern Border Province Administrative Center (SBPAC) was established in 1981. They took charge on political matters. The strategy used by the government shows some changes towards Muslims in a good way, but there still some problems occur. However, it still shows some positive impact. The rebellion is still ongoing, but it is much better, it is much lower compared to before.
Based on the conflict that arises at Southern Thailand, in my opinion, Southern Thailand should apply the conflict transformation method. The conflict transformation is actually a concept that aims to rethink how peace agreements are handled and implemented, especially in dealing with conflict situations that involve ethnicity. However, conflict resolution and approaches taken in conflict management are aimed at reducing or easing outbreaks of hostilities and have traditionally been the focus in the resolution of a conflict. In terms of the conflict in Southern Thailand, various groups were representing the Thai government, non-governmental organization, and civil society have already formed a unit. The formation of bodies such as the National Reconciliation Commission and the re-establishment of the Southern Border Provinces Administrative Centre are examples of action that have been done to help reconcile the issues. Meanwhile, non-governmental organizations play an important role in implementing social development programs, particularly at the village community level. Process conflict resolution is a component of peace that have a wide range of application. It consists of the procedure that the party must follow and engage in peaceful activities. Among the action that can be taken by the Thailand's government is to change the way of thinking and acceptance of the people about the conflict in Tabai without coercion as Mahatma Gandhi wanted, which is by using a way of developing the people's movement, increasing solidarity, protest form, demonstration, and demand change. The conflict in Southern Thailand can be solved if the government change their strategy. And the solution can be a special autonomy status within Thailand's constitution. But this requires a Thai government which clearly and credibly prefer a cooperative solution over violence. This can be achieved in three ways, which are: Thaksin changes his way in politics, Thaksin gives in to pressure from outside, and substitution of the minister, namely of Thaksin. The best way is third method. A new prime minister might be able to convince the insurgents that he has a new approach. Together with other steps to reform the governance, this could lead to a peaceful resolution of the conflict. These have been the preconditions why a resolution of the Aceh conflict was possible. Indonesia's President Yudhoyono is new in the office, and he proved that he is willing to reform the Indonesian governance, which is military corruption, against all the resistance. This gave scope for some hope, but also for despair. It lies in the hands and minds of Thaksin, which strategy and course he chooses. If he remains the hardliner, then there is just hope for exalting the separatists with the danger of an uprising sometime later and a growing heaven for international, which is Muslim extremists. This would be just a ceasefire solution, but Thaksin can become a statesman who rethinks his preferences and act accordingly. Although the probability at the moment seems to be very low, then there is the possibility to reach a sustainable solution without changing Thailand's border and giving the Muslim and the Buddhist nation a new perspective, and this is what they are looking for.
In conclusion, the daily conflict in Thailand's three southern provinces, which are Narathiwat, Patani, and Yala, demonstrates that the conflict has an unresolved epicenter. It is the center of the tremor that causes the conflict episodes that frequently occur in the Malay community in the three provinces. The epicenter we are referring to is the government's own policies and approaches, which are at the root of the conflict escalation. The Thai government has hidden goals in implementing policies that will lead to a protracted conflict. Most policies and approaches are biased and do not respect or mix rights and interests. It is more about coercion and emphasis in terms of implementation. As a result, it is clear that the Thai government's hidden goal is to form a negative peace in the three provinces as the Thai government is on the side of a large power in asymmetric conflict relations. While OMID is on the side of the small power, it is always opposed to the big power, even it is incapable of doing so. This ability is thought to stem from a strong enough identity, particularly the religion of Islam that they practice. However, there are other factors that drive such policies to be made. Among them is the perception among Thai officials who still consider Patani a country that is still colonized and every policy and approach must follow the colonial procedure. This perception is also possessed by OMID, which considered the state of Patani an independent state a long time ago and it should be liberated from Thai occupation. This question is an important matter that needs to be addressed by both parties because with this perception, it is a factor to other issues that make the conflict more complicated. The question of intercultural misunderstanding is also an important issue in conflict, but it can be overcome if constructive communication channels are formed so that there is a good response. Therefore, both parties must have sincere intentions in resolving a dispute, while this hidden goal should be raised so that it can be resolved well in addition to getting help from outside parties who have expertise in resolving a conflict.